What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with Judd Zulgad shortly after the Packers hold on for a 33-27 win over the Vikings. Judd, I think Christian Ponder was what we both expected today, which is he's going to make more plays than Donovan McNabb. He's also going to make more bad plays than Donovan McNabb. Right. We saw the good side and the bad side, but what I was really impressed with Christian Ponder was he throws the 2 interceptions to Charles Woodson, right, and then keeps throwing at Woodson. He continued to try to make plays. He didn't get gun shy, and he connected on a bunch of passes when they needed him to.
What impressed me the most and where I was wrong about Ponder was the Ponder I saw in the preseason, if he had any doubt, would take off, looked indecisive. The one thing is, once we started to watch Ponder at training camp, Tom, the arm questions, in my mind, went away. He's got a pretty good arm. He was hurt last year at Florida State. That obviously impeded his progress. That was the problem there. But the guy we saw in training camp in the preseason was indecisive, would run at a moment's notice, and I really thought that was sort of the guy that we would see again here today. And he looked, I honestly think, about 10 times more comfortable today. Now, he made some mistakes. He's going to make those mistakes. But he didn't seem to get flustered when he either made mistakes or when things broke down. And I really thought he would. That impressed me. And if there's any hope for this team, it's that fact. Because, as we'll talk about, there's a lot wrong here.
Yeah, and he's still obviously filling out the offense. We're not going to go overboard. He was 13 of 32 in the game, 219 yards. He throws 2 interceptions. His long pass play, 72 yards on the very first play was Tramon Williams fell down. He put a little too much air under the ball. Might have been a touchdown otherwise, but the touchdown pass to Shanko, some of those third down throws, that into Jenkins that ends up going for a touchdown against Charles Woodson.
First pass.
Those are NFL passes. Right. Those are tough passes to complete. You saw a little bit, and Leslie Frazier can say all he wants about that kind of loosened up the defense hitting that early. They still stuck a safety in the box on 1st and 2nd down every single series. It didn't change it that much, but if you can continue to develop that element of the offense, that will make a big difference.
Well, and the thing with Ponder, and the reason why I think it's okay to have some enthusiasm about how he played is, the Vikings are, what, 1-6 now. You've got to look at the rest of this season as nothing more than sort of a preparation and in some ways exhibition games for the 2012 season. So I think if you look at what Ponder did today, yeah, you're not going to get too excited statistically because this team is not a playoff team. But at least there's hope. The problem with McNabb playing quarterback, there was no hope. This team was losing and you had a quarterback that you knew wouldn't be back. Now you're doing what you want to do with Christian Ponder, which is get him ready for next season. So any progress he makes right now is a positive thing.
And I think it was telling that very first play, Bill Musgrave decides to run a double move on the perimeter and wants to go deep. Bill Musgrave had it with Donovan McNabb. It was extremely obvious within his play calling, by the way that he took the ball out of McNabb's hands at a bunch of key points in games. He had enough, and he wasn't going to give him opportunities to make plays down the field. With Ponder, you know, they ran into some trouble tonight, and he threw a couple of interceptions. He missed on some passes. I didn't think that there were a ton of gratuitous misses where guys were open. I thought a lot of the time, you know, they were working with the receiving corps, especially in the second half. No Percy Harvin in it. They don't have Berrien, who, say what you will about him, is still at least a little bit better than Greg Camarillo. I think they're different sorts of receivers.
I think
you can do more with Berrien, I think, that you probably can do with Camarillo.
Right.
You don't have, I don't think you had Shanko at 100% because he was limping around for quite a bit of this game. You had a bunch of issues there, but a few plays made. And obviously, Adrian Peterson, when he runs like this, he had Joe Berger at center, a bigger guy. They were moving people on that side of the line.
I think what we saw today, and I think one of the reasons why Frazier probably talked about the fact that Ponder's able to loosen things up for Peterson, true or false, is he saw that the possibility is now there to do that. With McNabb, that possibility was no longer there. The whole experiment just didn't work. With Ponder, when you watch what he can do, you say to yourself, okay, in 5 games, this could be fairly effective. And next season, it could be very effective, especially if you've got the right personnel to do it. So I think there are some elements of what Ponder is able to do that McNabb simply couldn't do. And this is why they drafted Christian Ponder. This is why, the only question is now, should he have been playing sooner? And that's a debate for another day. But we saw today why they drafted Ponder, and you get him ready for the 2012 season.
Yeah, win or lose, they had 22 first downs. There was not a lot of times in that game where the Packers were just sitting back and playing soft zone defense either. They were challenging them. They were putting a man down in the box. 9 of 16 on 3rd down in this game. They rack up 434 yards, more than the Packers had. Those are big numbers.
And let me say this. You go back and look at the box score of McNabb in Chicago. That box score is not that bad. But the body language, everything about that Vikings game and that team that day was, this is no good. This guy's no good. Today you look at the box score of Ponder, and if you don't watch the game, you say, these stats aren't great. But if you watched him play this game, and you watched how people sort of appreciated what he tried to do, you say to yourself, the kid had a pretty good day. And that's such a big thing in football. If you just look at the numbers, you get a much different read on than if you really look at the whole game and say, you know what, Christian Ponder made some positive steps. Yeah, the stats aren't fantastic, but he did some things that McNabb couldn't and won't do.
And coaches are fond of saying that it's all 11 guys working together. In this case, it is. You have to look at it, the offense as a whole. They had better tempo, I think, than they had a lot of times this season. It just looks faster with Christian Ponder, especially. They ran how many bootlegs did they run? 15 to 20 of them in this game. Even those, just the speed is a lot different.
And there were a lot of Packer fans in the Metro today. But Tom, didn't you get the sense too that the fans were excited about what Ponder did?
You kind of pronounced fans like Leslie Frazier there. It was longer.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm very excited. I'm very comfortable with Christian Ponder. But when you watch
it was a completely different
you sensed that the last time the Vikings played here, they won big against Arizona, and the starting quarterback got booed off the field. Today they lose to Green Bay, but at least you had a sense that people looked at it and said, oh, all right, I sort of get where this is going. Might not be good, but I get it.
The Vikings had scoring drives of 73, 50, 51, 52, and 88 yards.
Yep.
5 scoring drives that started on their half of the field. I'm pretty sure McNabb never led that in the game. And granted, the Packers have their issues in terms of their pass defense. They were 31st in the league coming in. Right. You should be able to produce against them. But I think that at minimum, they were encouraging signs. Let's not go overboard. It was not a winning performance by Christian Ponder.
No, and this team's now 1-6. Let's talk about what's wrong. I mean, there's all types of things still wrong.
I tweeted at one point, we didn't learn anything from this game. We knew the secondary was abysmal.
Well, we learned that the fact this team needed to see Ponder, and they finally got to see him.
Right.
That, we actually, and we did, we did learn that he's come a long ways from training camp. The guy we saw in training camp really was.
Right.
He would take off at a moment's notice and at times look confused. This guy didn't look confused. He made some mistakes, but he didn't look confused in making mistakes.
But in terms of their weaknesses, the receiving core has a lot of.
Bernard Berrien down today. Again.
Yeah.
Again, second time in 3 games. This is not working.
I don't think he's on the team come Wednesday.
Well, he should have been cut 2 weeks ago. This is not working. From either side. I don't know what happened this time. I'm sure we'll find out eventually. This is not working, and there is no reason on a 1-6 team to have a veteran like Berrien around if he doesn't want to be around. He is counterproductive to what they're trying to do, and that locker room does not need any more problems than they already have.
And there's so many moving parts now. You have still one player in jail. You have one player who may be cut tomorrow.
Yep.
You have, I think, a bunch of different spots where they have to continue to look and see if there's different things. I mean, they had E.J. Henderson out in the nickel today because he just isn't doing it anymore.
Nope.
If Winfield were healthy or if Chris Cook weren't incarcerated, not only Cedric Griffin's playing the number of snaps he did. They've got to continue to evolve what they're doing from a personnel perspective. Continue to find out how guys hold up. Brandon Fusco played, I don't know, 20 snaps, somewhere in that range today.
Yep.
I didn't see any glaring miscues. Anthony Herrera continues he's gritting it out. He went back in the game at one point.
But he's in bad shape.
Dragging his leg around. He's in really rough.
He left the locker room looking terrible. That knee, and it's the same knee that he ripped up last year, the ACL.
Against these guys here.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's out. Shanko was limping. Percy Hartman finally has that rib finally kept him out. So this team is really shorthanded. And the Chris Cook arrest, here's how big the Chris Cook arrest was. Last week, they practiced all week expecting to use the dime package, which means 6 defensive backs with Marcus Sherrills in the dime because the Packers use so many multiple receiver sets, Tom. Sherrills admitted today they didn't use dime once. So they actually had to alter how they approach the Packers from a personnel standpoint.
They were playing base against 3 wides.
Yeah.
To keep Sherrills off the field.
That is...
it's tough to do.
Not good is an understatement.
Right.
But that is something that. So now we're talking about a team that was so shorthanded that they couldn't even play the Packers, and I don't think that they would have beat them if they could have used the dime package. But they were playing base against wide receiver sets when every other NFL team would have an extra D-back on there.
And now we're going into a game next week between the Vikings and the Panthers in which I could see there being 1,000 yards of total offense and about 10 turnovers in that game. I don't know if mathematically that adds up, but it could just be wide open. Neither team can play defense. Both teams have young quarterbacks who are going to try to make a ton of things happen. Cam Newton versus Christian Ponder. It's a good storyline at minimum.
Cam Newton, and I think he's a much better quarterback than Dante Culpepper was as a rookie. But when you watch Newton run and the stuff that he does he not remind you with that body?
I haven't seen him enough.
He's
a big body just like Culpepper.
But he will take off at a moment's notice. And unfortunately for Culpepper, that is essentially what ruined his career in Carolina eventually because he took the hit on the knee.
Yeah, right.
But Newton just punishes guys.
Yeah.
And he runs, he's like a linebacker. And he is a better quarterback at this stage than Culpepper was. But when you watch Newton take off, there are things that remind me so much of when Culpepper did that. Because when Culpepper did it, it was about the first time that we had seen a quarterback who could actually punish guys. He could punish defenders. Cam Newton can do the same thing.
And who knows who's going to be out there in the field, particularly in the secondary for the Vikings next week. Won't assume Sanford will be back. I have no idea if Winfield will be back.
Yep.
I somehow think maybe Chris Cook will not be back.
Yep.
Ton of questions to answer this week. You'll be at Winter Park tomorrow. I'll be breaking down the tape. Full Vikings coverage at 1500ESPN.com. We'll see you.